The engine of my Peterbilt growled low as I guided it down Highway 50, the loneliest road in America. It was close to 2 a.m., and the world outside my windshield was an endless black void, punctuated only by the dim glow of my headlights carving a path through the desolation. I'd been running loads cross-country for over a decade, so I'd seen my fair share of odd things. Hitchhikers who disappeared before I got close, weird shadows slinking along the road, truck stops where people's eyes lingered too long. But nothing compared to that night. The radio crackled with static as I fiddled with the dials, trying to drown out the oppressive silence. That's when I noticed it, something moving in the periphery of my vision, just beyond the reach of the headlights. Coyote, I thought at first, or maybe a deer, but then it darted across the road, and I caught a better look. It was too big for a coyote and moved too fluidly to be a deer. My stomach tightened as I gripped the wheel, trying to focus on the road ahead. Miles ticked by. I should have been tired, but my adrenaline had kicked in, keeping my senses sharp. Then I saw it again. A dark shape, taller this time, almost humanoid, pacing my truck from the edge of the forest that hugged the highway. Must be my imagination, I muttered to myself, trying to shake the unease. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't the first time I'd heard stories about strange figures out here. Other truckers whispered about them on CB radio, the shadow walkers, they called them. I didn't believe in that stuff, at least not until then. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my palms slick with sweat. My high beams cut into the dark, illuminating the asphalt ahead. But the edge of the forest remained an impenetrable wall of black. I glanced in the side mirror, and that's when my heart stopped. It was running alongside my rig. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, maybe the movement of the trees or the angle of the moon. But no, this was real. Something tall and impossibly thin, keeping pace with me at 65 miles an hour. Its limbs were elongated, joints bending in unnatural ways, and its skin had a sickly, pale sheen that glowed faintly under the moonlight. I snapped my eyes back to the road. I wasn't about to let myself get pulled into some hallucination. The guys at the truck stops always said you shouldn't look too long at these things. Acknowledge 'em, and they'll make sure you never forget 'em, one old-timer told me. But how could I not look? I stole another glance at the mirror. It wasn't there anymore. A small part of me relaxed, but the rest of me knew that whatever it was hadn't just disappeared. The CB crackled, static filling the cab for a few seconds before a voice cut through. "Hey, you there? Eastbound Peterbilt?" I grabbed the mic. "Yeah, I'm here." "Who's this?" "Name's Bobby. Westbound, heading toward Fallon. You on 50, right?" "Sure am," I replied, though my voice shook a little. "You see it?" Bobby asked, his tone dropping to a near whisper. My throat tightened. "See what?" "You know what. Tall thing, pale, runs fast. Been following me for the last 10 miles. Thought it might have switched over to you." My blood ran cold. I couldn't reply at first. I'd spent years dismissing those kinds of stories, but now it was happening. "Yeah," I finally said. "It's out there." "Don't stop," Bobby said quickly. "Doesn't matter what you see or hear, you keep moving. Don't even slow down for a second." "What happens if you stop?" I asked, already dreading the answer. Bobby hesitated, then said, "Let's just say the ones who stopped. We don't see 'em on the road no more." The radio went silent. I was alone again, my rig roaring down the empty highway, the shadows pressing in closer. Then the headlights flickered. The headlights flickered again, this time sputtering like they were struggling to stay on. My stomach churned as the cab momentarily plunged into darkness, leaving only the eerie glow of the dashboard. When the lights finally steadied, I let out a shaky breath. That's when I saw it. It was in the middle of the road. My heart jumped into my throat as I slammed on the brakes, the rig groaning in protest. The tires screamed against the asphalt, and the trailer rocked violently, threatening to jackknife. The headlights caught it full on now, tall, spindly, and wrong. Its limbs were unnaturally long, and its head tilted in a way that made my neck ache just looking at it. The thing's face, or what should have been its face, was a blank slate of pale skin, smooth and featureless. It didn't move. just stood there, right in my path, like it was daring me to come closer. I fumbled for the mic. "Bobby, you there?" Static. "Bobby," I shouted, my voice cracking. "It's in front of me, man. What the hell do I do?" The radio hissed for a second, and then Bobby's voice came through, faint and distorted. "Don't stop." Too late. My rig had rolled to a stop about 30 feet from the thing. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at it, willing it to disappear. Took a step forward. Couldn't look away. My hands gripped the wheel so hard that my knuckles turned white. The thing's movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with invisible strings. It took another step, then another, until it was close enough that I could see the way its skin seemed to shimmer, like oil on water. The CB crackled again. "It knows you see it," Bobby said, his voice barely audible over the static. "You're in its game now. Only one way out." "What way?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Drive," he said. "No matter what, you drive." The thing was now only a few feet from my hood. Its head tilted sharply to one side, then the other, as though it was studying me. Slowly, it raised one unnaturally long arm and pointed directly at me. My instincts screamed at me to floor it, but I was frozen in place. Then it did something that broke me. It leaned forward, pressing its featureless face against the windshield. I could hear the faint creak of the glass under the pressure, and for the first time, I saw something in that blank void of a face. A faint ripple, like something was pushing from the inside. It was smiling. The smile stretched wider, warping the blank surface into something grotesque. It wasn't just a smile. It was a mockery of one, impossibly large and full of jagged, uneven teeth that seemed to materialize from nowhere. My breath hitched, and my vision blurred as panic set in. "Drive!" Bobby's voice roared through the CB, cutting through the static and my terror. "Now or it'll take you." That snapped me out of it. I slammed my foot down on the accelerator. The engine roared as the truck lurched forward, the sudden movement throwing me back into my seat. The thing didn't flinch. It stood its ground, letting the hood of my rig close the distance. For a heart-stopping second, I thought I was about to hit it, but just as the grill was about to make contact, it vanished, like smoke sucked into a vacuum. I didn't wait to question it. My truck barreled down the highway, the engine roaring louder than my pounding heartbeat. I kept my foot on the gas, pushing the rig faster than I'd ever dared before. The trailer swayed dangerously, and the tires screamed around bends, but I didn't care. I just needed to get as far away from that thing as possible. The CB crackled again. "It's not gone," Bobby said. His voice was strained, like he was running or fighting to stay calm. "It'll try to get back in. Stay on the road. Don't stop for nothing." "What the hell is it?" I shouted into the mic, glancing nervously at the mirrors. My headlights lit up the empty highway, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Bobby hesitated. "We call 'em shadow riders. They latch on to folks like us. Loners on the road, people who can disappear without anyone noticing. If it catches you..." He trailed off, the implication clear. "How do I lose it?" I demanded. "You don't," he said grimly. "You just keep moving. Sunrise'll drive it off. But until then..." His voice broke up, replaced by static. "Bobby," I shouted. "Bobby." Silence. The CB was dead. I was alone again, hurtling through the night on a highway that felt like it stretched into infinity. The shadows on the edge of the road seemed to pulse and shift, like they were alive. Every so often, I thought I saw movement, quick flashes of that spindly figure darting between the trees, keeping pace with me. Then came the tapping. It started faint, like a soft rain on the cab, but it grew louder, more deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. My chest tightened as I realized the sound wasn't coming from the roof. It was coming from the passenger side window. I glanced over, and my stomach dropped. It was there, clinging to the side of the cab. Its long, pale fingers pressed against the glass, leaving smudges that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Its head was tilted, that awful smile still etched across its face. The tapping turned into scratching as its fingers dragged across the window, the sound setting my teeth on edge. I swerved hard, trying to shake it off, but it clung on like it was glued there. "Get off!" I screamed, my voice cracking. I swung the rig into the oncoming lane, then back into my own, the trailer fishtailing dangerously. Still, it held on, its face pressed against the glass, teeth bared in that impossible grin. The sun. I needed to make it to sunrise. My rig barreled down the highway, tires screaming as I pushed the engine harder than I ever had before. The thing clinging to my cab didn't falter, its long limbs contorting as it shifted its position. Its face stayed pressed against the window, that grotesque smile widening with every mile. I couldn't look at it anymore. The sight of its face did something to me, like it was worming its way into my mind, twisting my thoughts. Instead, I focused on the road ahead, praying for the faintest hint of dawn on the horizon. Then the scratching stopped. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the thing wasn't on the window anymore. I risked a glance at the side mirror. Nothing. My heart pounded as I checked the rearview mirror. Still nothing. But the sense of being watched hadn't left me. "Where are you?" I muttered, my voice trembling. My fingers gripped the wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. That's when I heard it. A soft creak above me. My breath caught in my throat. It was on the roof. The rig swayed as I swerved instinctively, trying to shake it off, but the sound of its movements only grew louder. I could hear its limbs scraping against the metal, its weight shifting as it crawled toward the windshield. My heart felt like it was going to explode as I saw its pale hand appear at the top of the glass, its fingers curling unnaturally. Then its face came into view, upside down, staring at me through the windshield, that terrible smile wider than ever. Its head tilted to an impossible angle, and its blank, rippling face seemed to shimmer, as if something beneath the surface was struggling to break free. "Drive," I whispered to myself, my voice shaky. "Just keep driving." The road stretched endlessly ahead, but something changed. The first faint rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange. Relief surged through me. Sunrise was coming. Maybe I'd make it. The creature's smile faltered. His head tilted again, this time snapping sharply to one side as if it had heard something I couldn't. Its limbs twitched, and for the first time, I saw hesitation in its movements. It lingered for a moment longer, then let out a low, guttural sound that reverberated through the cab. And then it was gone. I didn't see it jump or fade away. It simply vanished, like it had never been there. The cab was silent except for the rumble of the engine and my ragged breathing. I didn't slow down. Not until the sun was fully up and the shadows had retreated to the edges of the world. When I finally pulled into a truck stop, I stumbled out of the cab, my legs shaking so badly that I could barely stand. Other truckers gave me strange looks, but I didn't care. I just needed to feel the sun on my face, to remind myself that I was still alive. Back in the cab, I noticed the passenger side window. The smudges were still there. Faint, glowing handprints that refused to fade, no matter how much I scrubbed. You'd think an experience like that would make me swear off trucking entirely, right? Truth is, it almost did. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that thing in my dreams, its blank face and that horrifying smile. Every time I climbed back into the cab, I felt like it was still with me, watching from the shadows. But bills don't pay themselves, and life on the road was all I knew. I stuck to daylight runs after that, but even then, I couldn't shake the paranoia. Every time I passed a stretch of dense forest or an empty rest stop, I half expected to see it lurking, waiting for the sun to dip below the horizon. And the handprints on the passenger side window, they never went away no matter how much I scrubbed or cleaned. It was like a permanent reminder, a warning. A few months later, I ran into Bobby at a truck stop in Kansas. He was sitting alone in the corner of the diner, nursing a cup of coffee that looked like it had gone cold hours ago. His face was pale, and his eyes had the haunted look of someone who'd seen things no one should ever see. "Bobby," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. He looked up, his eyes narrowing in recognition. "You're still alive," he said flatly, his voice rough. "Yeah, Thanks to you. I gestured to the waitress for a coffee. What about you? You still running into them? He nodded slowly, his fingers trembling as he lifted his mug. They don't let go easy. Once you've seen them, it's like you're marked. They know you now. The waitress brought my coffee, and I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. What are they, Bobby? What do they want? He let out a dry, humorless laugh. I've been running rigs for 30 years, and I've heard every theory you can imagine. Ghosts, demons, government experiments, aliens. Hell, maybe there's something older than all of that. All I know is they're drawn to the loners, the ones who won't be missed. I shivered, remembering how it had clung to my truck, how it had smiled at me. What happens if they catch you? Bobby's expression darkened. You don't want to know. He drained the last of his coffee and slid out of the booth. Stay safe, kid. And whatever you do, don't stop. I watched him walk out, his shoulders slumped, like he was carrying the weight of the world. As I sat there, staring at the steaming cup in front of me, I realized he was right. I was marked. I'd seen them and they'd seen me. The next few years were quiet for the most part. I stuck to busy routes, avoided the lonelier highways, and never drove at night. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before I saw them again. And then one night I did. It was on a run through the Arizona desert. I'd taken a shortcut to shave a few hours off my trip, a decision I regretted almost instantly. The highway was dark and empty, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. The CB had been dead for hours, and even the static seemed unnerving. I was halfway through the stretch when the lights started to flicker again. My stomach dropped as the familiar tapping began on the passenger side window. I didn't dare look, but I knew it was there. The tapping turned into scratching, and then a faint, muffled sound. The low, guttural growl I'd heard that night on Highway 50. My hands clenched the wheel as I pressed harder on the accelerator, the rig groaning as it climbed to speeds it wasn't built for. The growl grew louder, and I knew it wasn't just one this time. There were more of them. I didn't look. I didn't stop. I just kept driving, the shadows closing in around me, the growls echoing in my ears. When the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the noises stopped. The air felt lighter, and the road ahead was clear. But I knew the truth. They were still out there, waiting. And so I keep driving. Daylight runs, crowded routes, no shortcuts. But no matter how far I go, I know I'll never really be free. Because once you've seen the shadow riders, they're always with you. Watching, waiting. Months passed, and I did everything I could to put distance between myself and that nightmare. I avoided the lonelier stretches of highway, stuck to well-lit truck stops, and kept my routes in broad daylight. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself I was safe, the truth lingered like a shadow at the edge of my thoughts. One evening, I found myself parked at a bustling truck stop outside Amarillo. The lot was full, engines idling as drivers settled in for the night. I wasn't planning on staying long, just enough time to grab some coffee and stretch my legs before hitting the road again. Inside the diner, the smell of burnt coffee and greasy bacon was comforting in its familiarity. I slid into a booth near the window and ordered a black coffee, trying to shake the heavy feeling in my chest. The sun was setting, the sky outside painted in shades of orange and red, and I knew I needed to leave before darkness fell. That's when I saw her. She was sitting alone at the counter, a petite woman with curly red hair that framed her face like a halo. Her eyes were fixed on a cup of coffee in front of her, and there was a tension in her shoulders that I recognized all too well. She looked like someone who had seen the things I'd seen. I hesitated, then grabbed my coffee and walked over. "Mind if I sit?" I asked, nodding to the empty stool beside her. She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing slightly before she shrugged. "Suit yourself. Name's Jack," I said, offering a small smile. She didn't respond, just sipped her coffee in silence. After a few moments, I added, "You look like someone who's been on the road too long." That got her attention. She turned to face me, her eyes sharp and searching. "What do you know about being on the road?" she asked, her voice low. "More than I'd like," I said. Seen my fair share of strange things out there. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she looked away. For a moment, I thought I'd lost her. But then she said, "You ever heard of the Shadow Riders?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, my heart racing. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I've seen them." She nodded slowly, like she'd been expecting that answer. "They don't let go, you know. Once they've found you—" "I know," I interrupted, my voice barely above a whisper. "What about you? They still following you?" Her expression darkened. "They never stopped, but I've learned a few things about them. Ways to keep them at bay." My pulse quickened. "What kind of ways?" She glanced around, her eyes scanning the diner before leaning closer. "They thrive on fear," she said. "The more afraid you are, the stronger they get. You can't let them see it. You have to fight back." I frowned. "How do you fight something you can't even touch?" Her lips curled into a small, bitter smile. "You'll see," she said cryptically. Then she stood, throwing a few bills on the counter. "Stay safe, Jack. And remember, don't give them what they want." Before I could ask her anything else, she was gone, disappearing into the crowd of drivers outside. That night, I hit the road again, her words echoing in my mind. I didn't know what she meant about fighting back, but a part of me hoped I'd never have to find out. But deep down, I knew the truth. They weren't done with me yet. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and restless days. I stuck to safe routes, kept to daylight, and avoided stretches of road that felt too quiet. But no matter how careful I was, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. It was late one afternoon when I took a route through Nevada, a familiar highway that felt a little too empty for comfort. The desert stretched endlessly on either side, the road shimmering in the heat. The sun was setting fast, and I knew I wouldn't make it to the next truck stop before dark. A rookie mistake, but I had deadlines to meet. As the last light of the sun dipped below the horizon, the first flicker of headlights caught my attention. My stomach dropped. The shadows on the edge of the road seemed to thicken, growing darker and denser. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my breath coming faster. Then I heard it, the tapping. This time, it wasn't just on the passenger side window. It was on the roof, the back of the cab, the doors. It was everywhere, a cacophony of noises that made my heart race. I refused to look in the mirrors, refused to acknowledge what I knew was out there. "Don't give them what they want," I whispered to myself, repeating the red-haired woman's words like a mantra. The scratching grew louder, and then a low, guttural growl reverberated through the cab. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to focus on the road ahead. "You don't control me," I said aloud, my voice steadying. "You don't get to win." As if in response, the growling intensified. The shadows seemed to press in closer, and I caught glimpses of them in my peripheral vision. Long limbs, featureless faces, that same impossibly wide smile. My skin crawled, but I held my ground. I slammed my fist against the dashboard. "You hear me? You don't scare me." My voice echoed through the cab, defiant and raw. The tapping stopped. For a brief, terrifying moment, everything went completely silent. Even the rumble of the engine seemed muted. Then the shadows began to recede, melting back into the darkness beyond the headlights. The road ahead was clear again, and the oppressive weight in the air lifted. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop until I reached the next truck stop, my heart still pounding in my chest. When I finally stepped out of the cab, the cool night air hit me like a slap, grounding me. Inside the truck stop diner, I found a booth in the corner and ordered the strongest coffee they had. I was still shaking when a waitress approached, a friendly smile on her face. "Rough night?" she asked. "You could say that," I muttered, staring